Owning a car in Denmark can be super expensive, but how expensive is it exactly, and what's the best way to go about it? I'm going to find out in this video. Now, if you're only interested in the raw numbers and the conclusion, feel free to jump to this location, and then you will see that. Earlier, I made a video about my experience owning my first car in Denmark, which was a beater. That video was quite popular. So as a follow-up, I'm now making this video, which also incorporates my experience owning the new Mazda 3. In order to make it a more rounded approach, I'm also going to include other cars in that calculation. I'm also going to include a between 5 and 7 years old EV, which is going to be a Tesla Model 3 long range. And I'm also going to look at new cars, a new EV and the new petrol one. For the new EV, I'm going to take the Toyota BZ4X, which is a stupid name, but that's the most popular car in Denmark in the latest quarter. And for the new petrol, I'm going to assume the new version of the Mazda 3, just because I love Mazdas. Now, all of these cars are proper, good family cars. You could fit a family of 4 into those. For this calculation, I'm also going to take some assumptions. My first assumption is that the car will be driven at 20,000 kilometers per year, and 25% of that is going to be on road trips. So when you're not able to use home charging. And that's going to be interesting when we calculate the running costs. I'm also assuming the fuel cost is 15.5 crowns per liter, which I'm recording this video on the 28th of March. We're kind of looking into what the Iranian conflict is going to unfold, so nobody knows what fuel is going to cost, but as of today, this is a roughly okay price that we see on the market. So we have these 5 contestants. The beater car we're going to assume costs 20,000. The between 5 to 7 years old petrol we're going to assume my Mazda, which did cost 140,000. For the Tesla Model 3, we're going to assume 149, which seems to be the price point. The Toyota XYZ costs roughly 300,000, and the new Mazda 3 costs 261,000 crowns at a new price. The first cost that we're going to take into consideration is depreciation, and that means the speed at which certain assets lose value. If I were to buy a new car today and put it in my garage, not touch it for 6 months, and then try to sell it, I couldn't get the same amount of money for it than what I bought it for. That's depreciation. The depreciation is faster in the first years, and then it kind of slows down, and it is, as of today, different for EVs and not EVs. What the data shows us is that in the first 5 years, EVs tend to lose more value than petrol cars. So for this calculation, we are calculating with 9% of depreciation for the petrol cars and 12% of depreciation for the EVs. The depreciation curve of EVs is getting better. It is improving over time, and it is getting closer to the petrol cars, but it's not there yet. So depreciation depends on the value and as well as the fuel type. So for this one, the EVs take the biggest hit, and of course also the more expensive cars take more hit than the cheaper cars. Now the next one is financing. I'm going to assume that you put down around 40% of the car's value, so you are taking out financing for 60% of the car's value, and that financing is taken at an interest rate which depends on whether or not the car is EV or petrol. For this one, the petrol is more expensive, 5% per year, while the EV is financed at 2.75%. So for this one, the more expensive the car, the more interest you pay, but also if it's an EV, you're not paying as much interest as if it was a petrol one. It is worth saying that your total installment you might pay to your financing could be bigger or smaller than the depreciation and the interest together, depending on how long your loan is and what the interest rate is. Most likely you're going to pay a little bit more, but that more you're going to pay, that goes towards your ownership in the equity of the car. So it could be a little bit different when it comes to looking at this from a cash flow perspective. Now let's go into looking at the running cost. So that's either fuel or electricity. Fuel is relatively easy to calculate. We're just going to take the factory values of consumption in all cases. For the EVs, however, it gets more complicated. I'm going to assume that you have a home charger installed, and for that you're going to pay 100 crowns per month to have the unit, and then the electricity that goes into your car is just paid at the regular rate that you're paying for electricity, for which I'm paying 2.2 crowns as of today. So that's what we're going to assume. But we're also going to assume that if you're going on road trips, that road trip percentage that we talked about in the beginning, that portion of your electricity usage is going to be paid at a higher rate. For this one, I'm going to assume that it costs 4 crowns per kilowatt hour. And so for this, the EVs are clear winners. That's the big argument towards the EVs, is that they are cheap and clean to run. And also there's no significant difference in that cost element between the beater car and the more modern cars. Cars for the last 15-20 years have been relatively good with fuel economy, and that has not really changed. Now the next one is maintenance, and this is one category where the beater car just sucks. I have used the values from my previous video about my experience owning that crap Fiat Punto, and I paid a fortune. I paid over 9,000 crowns in 1 year for the maintenance of that car. And I guess that's kind of expected. If the car is old, there's more and more stuff that needs to be replaced, so the maintenance cost is going to be higher. Now for the Mazda 3, my maintenance cost is very, very low, but that's because I'm able to do a lot of the maintenance myself. If I look into the books of what the previous owner paid, he paid around 4,000 crowns for an annual checkup. That's changing the oil, changing the brakes maybe, and small things that need replacing. So for the between 5 to 7 year old petrol car, it's 4,000, and also for the new petrol car, I'm also going to put 4,000 here. The EVs are a little bit better. I'm going to count with 3,000 crowns because you still have to get them into the shop. You still need to get the brakes checked. I heard that their suspensions are not very good. They cost more to put tires on. They use bigger tires, and they also use the tires up faster because there's more acceleration, deceleration, and also the mass is bigger. So that kind of reflects that. And then the next one is insurance, often forgotten about, but a really important cost factor. And there's two kinds of insurance that we're going to take. The first one is just plain mandatory liability insurance. This is not a choice. If you have a car in Europe, you have to take liability insurance. And that covers if I crash into someone's car, then my insurance is going to pay for that car to be repaired. The other kind of insurance is called casco. So that's insurance for my vehicle. If I crash my vehicle into a tree, then my vehicle will be repaired, covered by that casco insurance. For the beater car, I will not count with taking out casco because of the low value. It doesn't really make sense. So for that one, we're only taking out liability insurance. For the others, for all of them, I went to a site where you can compare and get quotes for all the cars, and I use the values from that. Generally speaking, the more expensive the car, the more it costs to insure it, and EVs often cost a little more to insure because of the bigger maintenance costs. So in the calculation, I have used those values. And the last cost element before we get to the summaries is the tax. So that's the annual tax that we have to pay in Denmark, and I rounded the numbers a little bit here. Generally speaking, the EVs pay very little. Petrol cars pay significantly more, and let's not even talk about diesels. In this calculation, I took 1,000 crowns per year for the EVs, and I put 3,000 for the petrol ones. So when we look at the total, and this is where it gets interesting, the beater car costs 37,000 crowns per year to operate. The mid-age petrol costs 45,000 crowns per year to operate. The mid-age EV costs 41,000 crowns to operate. The new EV would cost 59,000 crowns to operate, and the new petrol would cost 60,000 crowns to operate. So what can we learn from these numbers? First of all, generally speaking, age defines the cost. The newer the car, the more it's going to cost to operate. The older the car, the less it's going to cost to operate. Second of all of them are expensive. So even the cheapest one, which is just the beater, that's 3,000 crowns. That's a lot of money. So yes, it is expensive to own a car in Denmark. But then the next interesting thing is that the jump from the beater to the mid-age one is not that much in terms of monthly cost. It's like less than 1,000, which is not much for the added value that you get out of a newer car. It's something that is still relatively new, something that was under warranty and was properly maintained according to the manufacturer's recommendations, but something that already had most of the depreciation, so you can get into it with a really good price point, but also provides the comforts and still relatively good reliability. Out of these two, the mid-age EV is, in my opinion, the best solution. The running cost is lower than the petrol one, and of comfort is higher than it would for the beater. Not by much, however. So if you are someone like me that might go on long road trips, someone that doesn't maybe trust the repairability of EVs, you don't like to be watched by Elon Musk, or you want to drive far, or you don't want to worry about range anxiety in the winters, there's a lot of reasons why EVs are not for everyone. But if you use it a lot for commuting, for relatively short distances, then EVs make a lot of sense. But anyway, here you have it. These are the numbers. These are my calculations. But let me know what you think about that. What do you think is the best car to operate in Denmark? I thank you for joining today, and I will see you in the next one.